Welcome to Fibromyalgia Talks. I am your host, Necie Edwards. So today we are going to be talking about managing chronic illness in the workplace. And I bought some products with me today that I will be showing you a little bit later to give you an idea of some of the products that I use to help manage chronic pain as well as sleep and to get more energy. So when you think about chronic illness in the workplace, many people have a chronic illness. It doesn't have to be fibromyalgia. It doesn't have to be rheumatoid arthritis. It doesn't have to be lupus. You could be someone that's diabetic, for example. You could have sickle cell anemia. I mean, it runs the gamut, right? You can just have a chronic illness. It can be anything. It can be cancer. I mean, there are so many different chronic illnesses out there. And we're talking about managing chronic illness in the workplace today because it's a really difficult thing to do sometimes. Sometimes it's, it depends upon you and your personal situation. So many of you have contacted me to ask questions about my journey, what is my story. So Fibromyalgia Talks is all about talking about chronic pain. Talk, listen, learn, help conquer fibromyalgia as well as chronic pain. Because when you have fibromyalgia, you don't just have fibro. There's usually a host of other conditions that go along with that, such as you may have problems with sleep. In addition to the fibro, and besides having problems with sleep, you still have that widespread pain. You may have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. You may have plantar fasciitis. I mean, you may have a host of other things that goes along with the fibromyalgia. So when you look at trying to manage that, it can be very challenging. So some of you know my story, my journey. Many of you don't, so I'm going to share it with you today briefly. I've worked in corporate America for over 25 years. And about in 2012, I had started a brand new job in corporate America. And what happened to me was I was subjected to bullying. I was bullied for 2.5 years. And I personally feel that it was the bullying that was the perfect storm that led to my illness. I don't feel that, it was the only thing, but it definitely didn't help. In fact, it made matters worse. Your story, you may be able to relate to this, you may not, but as we go through the journey, many of you will be able to relate to this. So having chronic pain, when it first started, I had widespread pain. I had difficulty sleep. I didn't know what was happening to me or what was wrong with me. Now this started in 2012. I started a new job at a company that I've learned the hard way, but it was basically a toxic working environment. And when I say toxic working environment, I mean, and I'm just going to call it out, there were a lot of problems in that workplace. You had a lot of dysfunctional employees. You had some employees that also had substance abuse issues, not due to chronic pain. I'm speaking of people with substance abuse issues who just simply like to party and they were using drugs. And this was also affecting their behaviors in terms of how they treated and, how they treated their coworkers. So working in this environment, management was also a problem. So my day-to-day, what that was like, just to give you an idea, was you come into work every day and there's always this pressure to perform. That's with every job. Every job wants you. You're there to do a job. You're getting paid to do a job. That's fair because they are paying you to do your job. Where it becomes toxic is when the job starts to affect your health. You're being bullied. You're being belittled. And in addition to that, they really don't care. It starts affecting your sleep. It starts affecting your mood. It starts affecting your ability to perform on the job. So when you start having a chronic illness, sometimes you may find yourself having to work longer hours just to keep up with your work. Because number one, if you're used to being a high performer like I was accustomed to being, and then you develop a chronic illness, that can and will slow you down. So you're constantly trying to, put in extra time because you want to excel on the job. And it's very frustrating when you're used to excelling on the job and now illness hits and now you have limitations. You're still going, doing everything you know how to do, but you're having sleep issues, you're having intense pain, and then you have problems on the job. So in my situation, I worked at this company where I mentioned I was bullied for 2.5 years. The people that were bullying me were my colleagues. We were on the same level. It was not the kind where they're going to get, in your face, that type of thing. No, it was more systemic where they would sabotage your work, or they would come up with new work rules and policies that only they knew about it because they were the ones that was changing the rules. You were always the one left out. It was always done intentionally, or the management team seemed to favor them and will give them information that they wouldn't share with you. So if you're working in a team environment, I said team, that means if you're working in a team environment, everyone should be on the same level where they're receiving the same type of information. It should never be a situation when you're working in a team environment where you are setting people up to fail. And that is what happened to me. They were just very, very hostile. I mean, you go to work and there was always this infighting, just a lot of hostility. I've worked with people who were very hostile, but they took it to a whole nother level, and they was just unhappy people. We each had a large staff that we were responsible for managing, and it became more problematic because they referred to it as, I can't quite think of the term, but let's say that you have a staff of 15 people and they have a staff of 15 people. Okay, they have the right to tell your team what to do. And so it was always this blurring of responsibilities. Basically, they didn't stay in their lane. They would sabotage your work. They would sabotage the work of your team. It was just a lot of strife. There's a whole lot more I could say about that, but I'm going to limit it because the more I would tell you about it, you would know exactly whom the employer is, and I don't want to call anyone out by name. But working in that environment, it started with the headaches. The headaches grew increasingly worse for me. In addition to that, I started developing chest pain. The chest pain got worse. Didn't know what was happening to me. Went to the emergency room a couple of times, and they said it was costochondritis. Well, what is costochondritis? They says it's inflammation behind the chest wall. When you're dealing with the inflammation behind the chest wall, it hurts really bad. It hurts to walk. It hurts to breathe. It hurts to move. I mean, it's just that bad. They couldn't tell me what was causing it. All right, then it started affecting my work because number one, we were working very, very long hours. Even when the workday would end, your day as a supervisor would never end because at the end of the day, there's reports that need to be done. There's call monitoring, there's case monitoring. I mean, there's a variety of different roles and responsibilities of work that needs to be processed. And you can't do that during work hours because during the day you're managing your staff. So you do that by staying late at the end of the day. And when you go home, it's the same thing. You're still tied to that laptop. You're still working hard to get the job done. And so what happened to me was I noticed that things began to change with me health-wise. And at that time, I had not been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And I started not feeling good. You know, the sleep just wasn't there like it used to be. I found myself more stressed all the time. I absolutely hated my job. I started hating it. I dreaded going into work every day because I knew going into work every day, it was going to be so much strife. I remember one day going into the office and it was just like the air was just so thick. You can just have, the best analogy for it is how you ever walked into a room and you walked into the room and you felt really good and peppy. Other times you've walked into a room and You didn't know what it was, but you just felt so uneasy that something just wasn't right. You didn't feel good being in that environment. That's how it was there every single day. And one of my employees one time said to me, he says, Miss Necie, I feel that there's something in the air. He referred to it as bad mojo. He said, I feel like there's some bad mojo or bad juju going up around in here. He says, because it's a very, very toxic place to be. And he began to feel it. And this continued for a while. And again, I still don't know what's wrong with me, right? So the bullying still continues. For those of you who have asked me that I reach out to management, yes, I did. I reached out to them several times. They knew about the bullying. And basically, I feel that they didn't care. And the reason why I say they didn't care is because they chose not to do anything about it. I had since learned, after I stopped working at this place of employment, that they had also bullied other people. So this was par for the course for them. This is what they were accustomed to doing, and they were not going to change their business practices because this is just the way that they function. Now, some people can thrive in that type of environment. Others can't. For me, it started affecting my health. I was making a very, very, very nice salary, and I just tried to do my best every day at work to get the job done. But no matter how hard I tried, it just wasn't enough. So I'm still going to the doctor at this point, trying to figure out what's the cause of my illness. Didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until about my second or third trip to the emergency room. Because what happened was each time, unfortunately, I was taken to the emergency room from work. Each time when I mentioned to you about the headaches as well as the really bad chest pain, that Costochondritis, it got progressively worse. So the next to the last time, this was probably, I had went to the ER in a total of 4-5 months had passed. I'm still having this chest pain. And it was very concerning to have chest pain and no one can figure out what it was. And we had an off-site meeting, the management team. And at our off-site meeting, one of the managers had said to all of us that, sometimes you can be in a job that's just not a good fit for you. And if so, let him know and he will work with you to help you find something else internally. And I surveyed the room and I thought, wow, maybe this is a good idea for me to now talk to management team that, hey, I want to transfer out of this department. And so I approached him after the meeting, the manager, and I said, what you said earlier in our management meeting resonated with me. I do feel that I'm in a position that's not a good fit for me. I also stated, I'm very thankful to have a job, but this position is not a good fit for me. So I would love to, schedule a meeting with you to sit down and discuss me moving on to another role. He seemed rather shocked that I approached him, which I was a little bit confused by his demeanor because after all, he did state that. But then I figured out why he was surprised with me contacting him. He didn't really expect anyone to take him up on his offer. That's why you need to be careful what you say and what you ask for. So he put it out there and I took him up on the opportunity to possibly find another job. It took him 30 days and he was the general manager. It took him 30 days before he would even follow up with me. So I had to repeatedly go to him and ask him, hey, I know you're busy, but when can I get some time on your calendar? I would get time on his calendar and he would keep canceling the meeting. Finally, I had the meeting with him, and in the meeting, he's the GM. In the meeting, he had one of the other senior managers present, whom I reported to. And so I didn't know that this person would be there. And they said to me point blank, they said, we have reported you to HR. We understand you're having health problems. And so our recommendation for you, Necie, is for you to step down from your role. He wanted me to quit my job or report into my colleagues whom were bullying me. So you're talking about more added stress. And if you're asking me to step down from my role to report into the people whom are bullying me, you're definitely not trying to help me. You're trying to harm me. And so I refuse. I refused because, number one, I knew what my rights were. I knew what the benefits were. And I just refused to do that. And when I refused to do that, each day that I would go back to work, the bullying intensified. It seems as though that I had a target on my head, and I knew what it was. They really wanted me to just quit. Because here's the thing. If you just outright and just quit a job, then you're not entitled to your benefits. And then if you do that outright and then you try to go file for unemployment, that's a big problem too, because they can prevent you or fight you from getting your unemployment. And again, keep in mind, at this point, I still didn't know what was wrong with me. I knew that I was ill. I knew that fighting with these people was probably not good for my health, but at the same time, I just refused just to be threatened or intimidated, and I refused to quit. And I just felt that, you know what, I'm going to press on until I get my breakthrough. So I'm a woman of faith, I'm a Christian, and I had been praying about this situation. So after I had this meeting, it was about 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks later, I came into work that day, and the chest pain was even worse than before. And I had more difficulty breathing. I didn't know what was wrong with me still. So I decided I was going to walk over to occupational health because I thought, okay, maybe it's my blood pressure that's really high. I really don't know. I go over to occupational health, and a coworker that was on another team, she said, "Necie, you don't look well today. What's going on?" And she knew about the bullying and what had been happening to me. And I said to her that I was going to walk over to occupational health, and she drove me over there. That was very kind of her to do that, and God bless her for doing that because she potentially saved my life in terms of driving me over to occupational health. So when I got over there, they immediately contacted paramedics. Paramedics was there, and I was transferred back to the hospital again. They thought I was having a massive heart attack, but I wasn't. Stress level was way high, chest pain, I couldn't breathe. And so they recommended that I take some time off of work. And once they admitted me, the ER doctor actually came to my room, and he had a nice long chat with me, and he explained to me that he had seen numerous other employees from the place where I was working. And he says that the company is a very toxic employer and that I need to find something else, or next time I wouldn't be so lucky. The next time it would be a massive heart attack. So, okay. Again, keep in mind, I still don't know what's wrong with me, right? I just know that I'm still having these chest pains. So long story short, at this point, in order to go on medical leave, you've got to have paperwork completed, get the medical records, and your employer has to review that. Some corporations have what they refer to as these absent management companies. So with an absent management company, when you need time off from work, they're usually the ones that have to have your medical records. They have to approve it. So typically the way it works is if you are off 3 days straight, so you're off, let's say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, 3 days in a row, and you don't return to work, then you then have to apply for FMLA. It depends upon the benefits, the leave policies at your company. And I knew based upon my conversation with the physician that they wanted me to be off work for at least 6 weeks, which required that I then apply for STL, or I should say short-term leave. Okay, and so that was a struggle because my employer did not want to cover my short-term leave. That's more stress, okay, more added stress. When you know that you're having a chronic illness, you know you're in a lot of pain, but now you're at the point where you can't go back to work and your employer does not even want to approve your leave. You're talking about more added stress. And you would think that at that point, when people know that you have a chronic illness or you have an illness and you haven't been feeling well for a while, you would think they would be more inclined to work with you, that they would care enough about their employees. That was not the case for me. So when about 4 weeks had passed, I still wasn't getting any better. I saw several other physicians and had a third opinion at that point. And it was at the third opinion in July of 2014 that I was actually diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And I was like, whoa, fibromyalgia, what is that? I had heard the term before, and I knew some people who said they had had fibromyalgia, but I really wasn't familiar with it. So if you're not familiar with it, basically it is widespread pain. And when I say widespread pain, it just feels as though you've been ran over by a truck and that the truck put itself in reverse and ran back over you frontward and backwards again. I mean, it's pain. You may say, where is the pain? It feels like the pain is all over because that's just how much pain you are in. But the pain can be, in my case, costochondritis, the chest wall pain. It can be headaches. It can be upper back, lower back. It can be neck, shoulder. I mean, it can be any part of your body. And basically with fibromyalgia, your central nervous system is out of whack. The best way to think about it is think about the thermostat in your home. You have it set to a certain temperature. Let's say that the temperature kept going up and up and up, would never stabilize. That's how it is with fibro. Your central nervous system is out of whack. The nerves and everything is flared up, and then the pain is just intensifies, and it spreads all over your body. So at that point, when I first received the diagnosis, the time had came where, being on short-term leave, I had to submit more paperwork to the absence management company, and they did not want to approve it. And after a long, bitter fight, they finally did. So when we talk about how to manage chronic illness in the workplace, this gives you an idea of just how toxic it can be, how frightening it can be when you have a chronic illness and you need to get time off from work. Now, this is what I learned along the way. And number one, fear. Fear can be very disabling. Fear can get you stuck in your tracks where you can't move forward. You're just stuck because you don't know which way to go. I've heard from many people with a chronic illness that live in fear every day. They go to work when they can barely afford to get out of bed. They hurt so much. But the reason why they keep pushing forward is because they're the breadwinners of their family, or they just can't seem to take time off work. They can't afford to be off of work. Even if they're married, once you lose that income, it could be 50% or more of your household income. That creates a burden on your family. That creates a burden on you. So many people, they're afraid to go on medical leave short term. Sometimes it's a matter of, you may work for a small employer, not necessarily a big employer, and you may not have any insurance. You may not have any insurance benefits. So it's hard for you to even get time off for work to even go to the doctor. So what I want to share with you when it comes down to managing the chronic illness in the workplace is, number one, you must take care of you. What that looks like for you may be different from what it looks like for me or for someone else. The one thing I want you to do, though, is this is you and you have a chronic illness, I want you to start documenting. The reason why I want you to document what's happening to you is because if things take a turn for the worse, and you may have to seek legal action from a labor relations or an employment law attorney, then you have your records as to what transpired. Document everything. And also, too, you document everything so that the next physician that you see, you have a running paper trail as to, what your diagnosis is, the doctors you've seen, the treatment that was prescribed. All that's important. And if all else fails and you can't return to work, and once that short-term leave ends, usually short-term leave is for 6 months that you've been off work. Once you get to the 6-month mark, then you get into long-term disability. And that's an even greater fight with the employer because they're still paying you all this time. So once you get to that point, you've got to submit more records. And you want to make certain that you have a physician, number one, that's documenting everything. So when you go to the doctor, make certain that they're documenting all your symptoms, documenting everything, because if something should happen and let's say you have to file for Social Security disability, you want to make certain that your medical records definitely reflect your chronic illness, your symptoms, your limitations, your disability, all of that. That's very vitally important. And also keep in mind that, you know what, you can be in a job that's not a good fit for you, just like mine was not a good fit for me. No one likes losing their jobs, but here's the thing. If you're still working and you know that that job is not a good fit for you and you have now been diagnosed with a chronic illness, before that chronic illness progresses, start looking for another position. Start looking for maybe something internally with the company or another place. You have to take care of you and do what's going to be best, number one, for your health, your peace of mind, your mindset, your family, your finances. Because I'm going to tell you, I can't stress enough the importance of taking care of you, mind, body, and spirit. My job put me through a lot of changes, and so I've learned all this the hard way. So I'm sharing all of this with you because I want you not to have to endure what I have endured. And that's why I started Fibromyalgia Talks, because it's talking about talk, listen, learn, help conquer pain. It's all about educating you on how to take care of yourself, navigate the legal system, navigating working with your employers when you have a chronic illness. So when you have a chronic illness, you know, you may sometimes want to talk to HR about it. Hopefully the company that you work for is not like the company that I used to work for, where you can really talk to people and confide in them in terms of what's going on with you, because you really need an advocate. You need someone that's supportive, that's going to be there for you. So thank you for tuning in to Fibromyalgia Talks. If you want more information on how I can best support you in your journey with chronic pain, then please contact me at info@fibromyalgiatalks.com. And thanks for tuning in today's show. Have a great day.